I heard you're an animator.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I'm about to show you some progress I made for my U12 project.
Mhm.
So here's my first one. What do you?
Carry on.
I am just a minute. Okay, so what do you think of this so far?
Brilliant. Okay, so I really like it. What particularly do you want me to start with commenting on?
Would you like to comment on that? What do you think of the aesthetic of it, that animation? Do you think it's fluid or?
Okay, yeah. I think. I mean, considering like I taught you animation last year and helped you out with other projects, I'd say it does definitely stick with the style in which you feel like accustomed to. 8-bit, very limited amount of frames that you're using. But it's totally fine. I think it does actually work. It's quite nice. It could obviously be perhaps more detailed with more frames, but that's not necessarily taking away from the style. It doesn't necessarily need more frames. Yeah, it's just that it could. Yeah. I also really like the aesthetic of it. So it reminds me of if you remember the the old original like Dragon Quest games, or what they were called in the US, like Dragon Warrior. So that's the same artist that did say like Dragon Ball Z and things like that, Akira Toriyama. So I definitely get that sort of style from this knight. I mean, obviously it's the theme, but also the what's the word? The proportions and things like that, and definitely the helmet and things. I definitely get that feel from it. Yeah, I mean, no one has a sword that big, but you know, in a sort of a dinky anime style, like that is reminiscent of like that generation of games. I think it is really good. When it comes to the animation, you asked if it's fluid. Let's have a look at this. Okay, so we play it. Okay, there is just a small amount of scaling issues. Yeah, there should be like an onion tool option in.
Yep, it's over here. I did try to use that, but I find it kept disappearing every time I tried to.
Okay. Onion skin settings. Okay. Frames before 1. So you could essentially, go one frame after the other. And try to put them in. I can only assume what you're doing is you're taking all the pixels and stuff and copying them over to a new layer. Yeah. So at any point in time, you could line them up just so that there isn't that jumping. Yeah. Can you see there and there? There's some jumping. Yeah. Also on this frame here, you've got quite a lot of jump. The sword moves. It obviously shows that you are spending the time to do it literally on a frame by frame basis, but I don't necessarily know how much this layer adds to it. So for example, if I was to increase this one to there and maybe get rid of this layer, I have the same movement because it doesn't really add much to it. It's that part there, yeah? So with a little bit of tweaking, you could make this really, really good. Other than that, it's just like it's missing color and things. Obviously, these are like prototypes, and you're going to move on from this for, I guess, your final project. Yeah, that's the plan. I would say at this point in time, it would be nice to at least get one of these colored, just to see what it would look like. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Here's some more animation. Would you like to have a look at them?
Yeah, sure.
This one of him putting out a sword.
Yeah, looks good.
Apart from the fact that it's opaque at the beginning, it just don't really sort it out yet.
Yeah, that's fine. Literally, there you go, it's sorted now.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say, I guess you're going for like a fading in sort of effect with that opacity change.
To be honest, yeah, I was.
Yeah. Okay. If that's the case, when you say, are you hoping to do these on a frame by frame basis and then import these into After Effects or something?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. If that's the case, then you could add like opacity and things like that using keyframes and things. Like an example would that be, there's a keyframe, opacity is right there. Yeah, and you can essentially do the keyframes literally wanted to. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because you have more control on the whole thing. If you just treat this area as like an asset creation area and then you import it into After Effects. And is it a style choice to have his fingers as single pixels?
Yeah, because it's easy otherwise to draw a large detailed hand.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. He's got a gauntlet on, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Do you need to even draw the individual fingers?
To be honest, yeah, otherwise it doesn't look right.
Okay, all right. My suggestion would be perhaps to think about it. So could not use the brush tool because the timeline playhead is not over the target layer.
You have to click on that layer.
Yeah, cool. So which one are we on? Layer. Oh yeah, I'll just click on this one. Okay. So, all right. So you've drawn like this. Ignore the lack of pixels. Okay, I'm fully aware that is. So say we've got that. Obviously, it is curling a bit. It's more like that. But essentially, that's what you've got there. Yeah. This doesn't necessarily take into account thumbs and stuff like that. So if this was facing towards us, the thumb would be coming out there. Yeah. You're using a limited amount of pixels. So in reality, what you'd want to do is something that's similar to this. Obviously, yeah, with more detail there. But what's stopping you from maybe doing something simpler? It's a gauntlet at the end of the day, yeah? That looks more like a mitten, but when it comes to using pixels and things like that, that could generally work for you. So yeah, maybe consider that. Otherwise, at the end of the day, to shut me up, all you have to go is yeah, Carl, it's a style choice. Live with it, and that's totally fine. I can live with that. But just be aware that there is other options available to you. Again, there's some scaling issues. Yeah, can you see? Just fixate on the feet at this point in time. It's moving all over.
Yeah, it's a bit zooming in and out.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, 8-bit is very precise. At the end of the day, there's no movement or anything like that because we're all on this pixel grid. And the problem with recreating this on a on a much larger scale pixel grid is you have essentially this movement and stuff like that, and any sort of discerning viewer will sort of get lost out of the environment that you're trying to create. So yeah, just not, as I'll say this a few times, not taking away from what you've been able to do independently. This is great, but I know one of the areas in which you could improve is your eye for detail, and specifically perhaps being a bit more critical of your own work, because you're at this stage now where you've got the basic concepts of this animation style and stuff like that, and you really need to embrace it and be working on it on a truly professional level. Yeah, congratulations for being able to get into University of Bedfordshire. What is that doing? Is that media production or animation?
Animation, basically.
Animation, brilliant. Okay, so you're going in there with some experience. You're going to be able to show some great stuff. I guess you have shown some great stuff. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why you got the unconditional offer. But now you got up your game, obviously, because you're moving closer to the world of the professional.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, show me something else.
I did this some more attacking the dynamic animation.
Yeah.
Not having to play.
Yeah, it's good. Now, I really like some of the poses you've got. Did you? Now, don't say this obviously, but did you beforehand go over this after you had created a basic sort of structure of the character?
I did. I just spent ages drawing stickmen, lining them up, and then drawing on top of them. Yeah.
Okay. If that's the case, then yeah, that's obviously the right way to do it. It's a little bit concerning when you go through this, though, that there is just a small error. Now, I'll show where I mean. Now, for everyone listening, this may come across as me being quite harsh, but we have actually done this interview twice now. And the second one, I was a bit more complimentary, wasn't I? I'm literally just getting to the point now. let me just get rid of all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not working for some reason. Command Alt.
Oh, Command Alt. Whoops.
There you go. Cool.
There you go.
All right. Okay. So if we look through this, when you play this, I can see what's happening and everything like that. But there's just a couple of frames where it does get a little bit confusing as to the intention with the movement. Yeah.
Oh, is it mainly the part where he holds his sword in one hand and switches poses and?
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, he's holding the hand in both hands.
Yep.
He pulls it back, both hands still. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He then moves one hand. I think if I remember correctly, it's the jump from here to here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
His torso twists round. Okay, so that this hand has to be the one that's sticking out here, and this hand has him with the sword. But when we look at it, it's actually the other hand who's got the sword. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's doing, he's an impressive knight because it's physically impossible to do that. Yeah. He's literally switched that. Yeah. Unless I may be wrong. Yeah. It could be. So say this arm is coming round, and that's in front here, and the sword is resting above his thigh, and then he pulls it round away from the thigh. But again, it might be a little bit confusing, just because at this point in time he's doing some really, really crazy gymnastics to be able to twist his wrist round. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anyway, that's just me being really, really picky, and obviously you need to take into account that there's not a lot of other people in your age range, I guess, particularly in, from my experience, that is able to, just independently do this. Yeah. So well done for what you have done. But before you finish up, you would need to obviously look at it and go to yourself, am I truly happy with that? And make the tiny little changes you need before you import it and bring it into After Effects. Okay. Also, here, we've got an awful lot of frames of him building up to this big swing, but then we've got literally nothing between. It might be good to just have another frame inside.
Okay.
Where the sword is down like that. Yeah?
Yeah, that's probably me. I find it difficult making a sword pose, so I managed to get this after so many tries.
Yeah,
but I could improve that, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why you create the outer structure first.
Yeah.
And then go into it.
That's what I've been trying to do, but for some reason it just, to me, won't turn out right. So, or maybe it's just me being a bit too critical.
Yeah, I mean, everyone will tell you animation takes patience at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Anything else to show me at this point in time?
Here's my character designs. This one's completed, but I need to create for making the animation, which I've started on. So what do you think of the design so far?
It's fine. What's the story with this? I know you're going into into your final project, and at this point in time it doesn't necessarily matter what the story is, but have you worked out what the story is and everything?
I thought about just basically having a knight fighting against a mage, and she summons a dragon at some point. Okay. Which kind of attacks her, and then one of them wins, I think the mage does.
Okay. Alright then, that's fine. Yeah, just keep the idea simple. I mean, I think I talked to your tutor about this a little while ago, and she said it was a knight fighting a dragon or something like that.
Yeah, it was.
I wasn't aware that you were doing a mage. It's fine at the end of the day. As long as you've got a cohesive idea sorted, I would just recommend don't bring in lots and lots of different aspects. Just really focus on one aspect. If you remember, I keep showing you that Perseus fighting the Gorgon animation. I mean, what is that at the end of the day? What are the characters in that? You've got Perseus, you've got the Gorgon, and that's essentially about it. There is rats because they make a part of the story, but that's essentially it. And they play with those two characters. Yeah, so it could be a knight and a dragon. Yeah, you could maybe focus yourself more on like making concept art for dragon, but bring in the mage if you want to. But it might just be extra work when you could really fine tune like two characters fighting against each other. Yeah.
About the dragon.
Oh, you got the dragon.
Yeah, I got a design.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, what do you think of it so far, though? This is what I've done so far.
Okay, looks good. What's the scaling? Like, how big is the dragon going to be compared to the knight? Draw the knight in size next to the.
Go to copy and paste the knight, yeah.
No. I just want you to draw stickman. Like, talk to me about like how big this knight is going to be on the screen compared to this dragon.
The knight is just meant to be that big, meant to be that big essentially.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, that's fine.
So.
It looks good. It looks good. You've got like muscle tone there, and other things. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
It looks nice. It looks nice. Again, I would recommend maybe before you jump into your pixel stuff to consider like doing some concept art.
Oh, I've done that already for most of my characters. My dragon is just I can't just done this straight off. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, it's good to see what it's like pixelated, but you might find it easier to really like use the limited space you have with the pixels better if you do some concept art first. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right then. I think that's it. You got anything else you want to ask me?
For animation, like, what kind of frames? What is the minimum amount of frames you'd recommend to create maybe a smooth flowing animation for one movement?
Okay, so it should be like full frame animations, at least 24 frames per second. What you get in a lot of things that are done on like a tight budget and time limit is limited animation, which is 12 frames per second. I would stick with either one of those because you want to, meet professional standards. I think 12 is okay, to be honest with you. 12 frames per second at the end of the day. And what you're working with at the moment. We have a look at this.
This was like 7, 8.
Yeah, 25 frames per second. Okay, and that's, how long is that? Is that a second? I would say it's close to a second, isn't it? Okay, yeah, and that's what? That's 8 frames per second. Yeah, you could get a bit more fluidity in that, and I think I've gone into that with, say, this, like, you aren't, you jump in here. Well, this is 12, isn't it?
That's more like 10, I think. Yeah, I could add maybe a few more into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like bunch it in there to add to the fluidity. Yeah. Okay. Just remember, at the end of the day, not everything on the screen is moving on a frame. Yeah. Often, as I said before, like it could literally just be a character's mouth is moving, and that's the only thing that's moving for several areas. Okay.
By the way, for I thought about make it really detailed, adding in breathing and.
How would you go about
little details like maybe?
How would you go about making him breathe?
Maybe getting the armor to move, bounce up and down.
Yeah.
Like something like that.
If I would do anything like that, I mean, like I obviously would work in a different way than you would. I tend to like break apart my characters into separate moving parts and then keyframe them. It's just easier that way because I don't have to keep drawing the same thing. For each of your frames, you're going to have like the torso, like the chest area, expand and contract. If I was to make something in After Effects, I can do that without without even keyframing it, I can just set an expression so that it would move, a certain way. Obviously, so there are ways in which you can add these elements based on the techniques that you use. Otherwise, for yours, how would you go about doing that if it is a frame by frame animation?
I thought of making the torso move or drawing some more details on it and make it appear like it's moving. The old style, but
yeah, it makes the process a lot longer.
Yeah.
Why don't you consider breaking up your storyboard into certain shots so that on a wide shot where you've got, say, the character and the dragon in, obviously you're not putting in breathing there, but if you've got like a close-up of dialogue or something like that, you can have a bit of breathing in the chest, and then that's easier for you. Yeah. Okay.
I'm kind of interested in that motion tuning method. Would you like to show me quickly?
Oh yeah, sure. Don't worry, it'll take a little while. I take it, what you could do is take this recording into Premiere Pro and just cut out the bit where we're waiting for this. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I've kind of got used to After Effects. I've been using it for a few months now. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. If you were to do things in After Effects, though, you need to maybe like create assets and stuff like that in Photoshop or Illustrator first. Maybe ditch the 8-bit style.
Yeah, that's what I'll do for my next project. I'm going to do the actual 2D animation.
Yeah.
Non drawn. Yeah. It's taking its time.
Okay, so I'll just use shape layers to give you an idea of how you can do this. Now, you have done this with me in the past. Oh, come on. Sort yourself out. Go away. You've done this with me in the past. Say this is his breastplate. Well, whenever you're ready. And we'll just give him a head as well. That's my knight. Looking great.
Great design, yeah. 10 out of 10.
Okay, so in the same shape layer, now generally I don't tend to work within the same shape layer, but each one has its own transform option. So in here, you've got, say, scale. what you're looking for is to create something like that. You're looking at the way in which we change the properties. Easiest way to do this would be to literally go back and forth. So at the moment I'm using the keyboard shortcuts to copy and paste. Now I haven't obviously had a chance to look into expression tools to think of a way in which to do this straight away, so you have to forgive me. Expressions are obviously a little bit of basic programming and coding that you can essentially add to this. Okay, now this isn't exactly perfect, but you know,
effective.
Yeah, look, this is a guy that's just finished fighting a dragon. You know, he's going to be a bit knackered, to be honest with you. That would be one way to do it. Now, just to give you an example of how expression tools can be used, if I was to press Alt and click on the stopwatch for scale, brings up an area to type in. So I can choose Wiggle. Now, Wiggle isn't the correct expression tool. There are a few expression tools, but this is the one that I go to just to describe what you can do. So, as we said, we played around with the scale.
Yeah.
Again, now here, what this is going to do is this is going to automatically assume a certain way. Now, it's not giving us the same thing, but it illustrates the fact that we're not using any keyframes or anything like that. Okay? If you were to look online, there are some great pages that would help us understand how to use expressions. They're not actually on the After Effects webpage. It's a third-party website that was created quite a few years ago, and all of the expression information is still quite useful. Let's see if we can find it on the front page. Why are you doing that? Why are you being such an annoying piece of crap? Come on. I'm obviously looking at this one. School of Motion, After Expressions 101, is that it? There's quite a few to essentially look at. There's one in particular that was useful to me a little while ago. So, no, this is obviously another one. So you've got things like motion script and things to play around with. Yeah, and obviously you can go into plugins and things like that. There we go, motionscript.com. This is one that was very, very useful to me. So you've got mastering expressions, scripting, and things like that. Expression is design guide, lots and lots of things to play around with. Yeah. So if I was to go into this,
yeah, this looks pretty useful. So I might actually use that.
Yeah, it depends what you want to use. But there's literally loads and loads of stuff in here. Really, when you're kind of look for like random motion, I would say that fits in with the wiggle thing that I showed you. Okay. You know, and perhaps like a pendulum type of thing. Yeah. Okay, so a pendulum, a generating decaying pendulum motion. Let's just take this, see what happens. Let's apply it. So apply the following expression to the rotation property of a rectangular solid. Let's just see what happens when we do it to our that's not going to work. It's not necessarily going to work. So let's just get rid of that one. Let's try it on the rotation. See what happens.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives you that, and what's it doing at the end of the day? You get your maths quota with this. Velocity, amplitude, decay. Okay, so it starts like this and it slowly decays by a factor of 7, and there you go. And that's essentially what it's doing. Yeah, so velocity equals this number, amplitude equals this number, this equals this number, and then there's the code. And that's the algebraic.
The formula, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, there you go. So there's lots of things for you to essentially. I would, if you wanted to get into that, actually just have a look at this website and play around with things. And it's amazing the amount of things that you'll learn. And at the end of the day, an expression, anything you do, you could do it manually using keyframes, but it saves you so much time. Can you imagine how quick your production workflow would be if you were able to produce things like that?
Imagine that right now.
And obviously, like now that you've done that, think about it this way. Maybe velocity doesn't equal 7. Maybe velocity equals 20. Let's see what happens. Whoa!
I'd make the breathing a lot faster then, couldn't I?
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily say use the pendulum effect for your breathing, but
effect,
there must be something in there that just is mimicking breathing, like a steady thing. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. I hope that was useful.
Thank you very much. That's really useful.